Yeah, anyway, weather's getting colder and all this, and um, after a couple of months of putting out bird seed and stuff, even on the ground a little bit, and getting no takers, now the front of the house, my brother's house, looks like a scene from Alfred Hitchcock. And they're starting to use the bird feeders too. I've got about 3 of them, and the hummingbirds are starting to use the hummingbird feeders. So once one bird finds out there's food, they all show up. And I just want to add a little bit about our cheater here, Castor. He's got a book out that's coming out on Halloween. So if you want to be horrified on Halloween, just go ahead and download or purchase his book. And it's all a bunch of lame excuses trying to justify his cheating. And of course, The Guardian has sympathetic article. I'll put a link there. I'm not going to talk much about it. The big news of the week was a crackpot is now Speaker of the House after all this wrangling and shit. And before I go into that, anyway, old Mike Pence, the former vice president to Donald Trump, he decided to suspend his campaign, figuring it wasn't worth the time and the bother and whatever, and no interest, in other words. But this, getting back to Johnson, he's a crackpot. He's a complete and total crackpot. And if there are people out there that think, well, I'm going to vote Republican because the Republicans stand for women's sex-based rights and Democrats don't, and I want to teach the Democrats a lesson, you better fucking reconsider it. You be careful what the fuck you wish for, because these guys are total fascists that would send women back into the home, cooking and cleaning, and be little housewives and slaves to men. Is that what the hell you want? If you're a so-called feminist and you're going to vote Republican, I have no use for you. Sorry, you're the enemy. Because you are not using your brains at all. And what in the hell's going on? And this guy is hardly harmless. I mean, this is pretty bad. The goal, if you call this guy a moderate or mainstream Republican, that's how off the wall crazy the GOP has turned into. And this has led to a bit of a debate about Johnson's ideological record. Just how conservative. Why do they use that word conservative? They're not trying to preserve or conserve anything. They're radicals. They're extremists. And he was a key figure to overthrow the 2020 election. Really qualified. He's not qualified to be a damn dog catcher. And so Republicans think 60% said Biden's win wasn't legitimate. I think a lot of them are just sore losers because the man they picked so clearly lost, or whatever. I don't even think most of them even believe it. Meanwhile, the overwhelming majority of Republicans in a recent CNN SSRS survey indicated that the criminal charges Trump faces over his failed attempts to overturn the 2020 election are not relevant to his fitness to serve another term. Can you believe this? So even if he ends up at Florence ADX, long shot, say if he even did that, hey, they'd support him. They'd support him if he was dead. And they ran his stuffed carcass for public office. They're willing to go over the cliff with this guy. It's a goddamn cult. Indeed, we can't forget that a clear majority of House Republicans, including Johnson, voted against certifying the 2020 election results from at least one state. Their votes were outside the mainstream among all House members, but not within the House Republican Conference. They've got fascists. But hey, they stand for women's sex-based rights. They seem to care about women's sports. They don't give a shit about it. That's just pandering for votes. That's what they're doing. That's why you don't vote one issue. And these guys, like I said, they're scary. These people, including this guy. And the old New York magazine has 15 not fun facts about Speaker Mike Johnson. He's a piece of work. Nobody had heard of him until he was picked. That was kind of like Dan Quayle when he was picked as Bush the first running mate. Nobody had even heard of him. And then they wished they'd never heard of him after they did hear of him. But this guy is beyond the pale. Despite his Ned Flanders persona, he's a pretty troubling dude. Unless, of course, you think the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump, would love to see abortion outlawed nationwide, and don't think same-sex marriage should be legal. Okay, so here's fun facts, and I'll just go through just the bullet points rather than the detail here. He masterminded Trump's election coup. And remember, I'm going to link this so you can read this article in its entirety. If you learn one unsavory fact about Johnson, it's probably that he was a key architect of Trump's effort to steal the 2020 election. And then it goes on. Number 2, he's the least experienced House Speaker in 140 years. So it's only his 4th term, and he's never served a senior leadership position or even a full committee chair prior to his election as Speaker. He worked for the right-wing legal group behind the case that ended Roe v. Wade. That's that good old Alliance Defending Freedom that's tainting feminist groups and stuff in order to kill it. But there's that. He wants to ban abortion nationwide. You aren't going to ban it. You're just going to make it illegal. It's not going to ban it. And then he has an A+ rating from a group that has slandered suffragist Susan B. Anthony by lying about her position on abortion. Anyway, that propaganda outfit supports him, so you know he's no good. He blamed abortion for the school shootings. And it says here, he says, many women use abortion as a form of birth control, which it is. You know, in certain segments of society, and it's just shocking and sad, but this is where we are. When you break up the nuclear family, when you tell a generation of people that life has no value, no meaning, that it's expendable, then you do wind up with school shooters. Oh, you're a stupid motherfucker. But of course, he's against gun control. He also blamed abortion for Social Security and Medicare cuts. Yeah. Because they're not having enough babies. Because that's all women are for. He blamed mass shootings on the teaching of evolution. Oh, Christ. He fought to make taxpayers fund a Noah's Ark theme park. Isn't he a winner? This guy's from Louisiana, by the way. He fought to ban same-sex marriage in Louisiana. He led an anti-gay campus movement. Yeah, so let's see what he did there. The Day of Truth. He organized Day of Truth counter-protests. This effort, which involved fascists, I'm not going to call them conservatives, handing out pamphlets on the evils of homosexuality, was spearheaded by Johnson and, of course, the Alliance of Defending Freedom, which is such a misnomer. He wrote a lot of homophobic op-eds. He introduced the national version of Florida's Don't Say Gay bill. He was an advocate for covenant marriage. Oh, Jesus, that's a damn joke. Which makes it harder to divorce. It's a crock of shit. Marriage is a crock of shit anyway. So it's all about, he's all about preserving the patriarchy. He blamed post-Katrina looting on America turning away from God. Oh, that's, sure, they were turning away from God. He doesn't believe in the separation of church and state. Well, no kidding. This shouldn't come as a shock, considering everything we've just learned. ABC News reports that during a podcast recorded in September 2022, Johnson referred to the so-called separation of church and state and said the founders wanted to protect the church from an encroaching state, not the other way around. If anybody tries to convince you that your biblical beliefs or your religious viewpoint needs to be separated from public affairs, you should politely remind them that review their history and you should not back down. Never mind the Constitution prohibiting religious tests for public office. And, you know, people have made crude jokes about this guy being Trump's Johnson. You know, it's like what used to be, you know, and I mean, literally thousands, tens of thousands of people with the surname Johnson. So I don't think they should make stupid jokes about it. But, you know, it's like the name Richard. It used to be that the nickname was Dick. And you can't use that now because, and nobody hardly ever uses that. So they use Richard, if somebody's named Richard, Richard or Rich. But I guess it's best to be Rich and not have a dick. Or not be a dick. Not have a dick. Be rich and not be a dick, I guess. But anyway, that's a shitty joke that was put through quite clumsily. So anyway, we've got this piece of shit as Speaker of the House. We'll see how long he lasts. I'm sure they're doing a political death watch on this guy. But he's a dangerous piece of crap. And this is what we're having to deal with in this country. Are people that are hell-bent on a theocratic government. They're hell-bent on authoritarianism. They're hell-bent on fascism. And you have no, if you're a feminist or you're a Democrat or even a progressive or a liberal or a human being, let's face it, if you're a human being, you have no business voting for this goddamn shit. You really don't. Anyway, and voting against your interests. But anyway, that is all I have to say for now.